Just another neat comment on Nautilus Live, just speculating whether the folks who make the Canadarm on the International Space Station make marine robotic equipment. And I remember you telling me, Josh, that the other big customers for craft Predator arms are the nuclear power industry.
Well, I think if I don't know this for sure, but I believe that originally they built them for like EOD work. So basically bomb diffusing stuff remotely, right?
Yeah.
So then they would run them from afar using cameras and stuff to for dealing with bombs and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then they were adapted to go underwater at some stage along the way.
The other image I have of them is car plants, I guess, must use a lot of technology like this.
Yeah, similar, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, because developing this kind of stuff is way beyond the resources of something like the Ocean Exploration Trust to invest in. So we actually make good use of a lot of off-the-shelf components.
Yeah, there are quite a few off-the-shelf components. Both the arms are off-the-shelf, the hydraulic systems, the valving, a lot of the electronics. So we'll do stuff like we'll make our own housings and things like that, custom parts, or there were several parts in the vehicle that were built, or if we need to design a frame or something for things to hang on. But a lot of the componentry is just off-the-shelf stuff we purchase. Yeah, and sometimes we modify things, or we ask for special orders on certain things from suppliers to fit our needs.
Yeah,
So.
Gabby was talking the other day about a previous ship she worked on carried its own 3D printer.
Yeah, that's actually becoming more common.
Yep.
We don't have it on board here, but they can certainly come in handy for kind of quickly making up some parts if you need something in a pinch. Yeah, on board we have a milling machine and some small tools that we can use to customize some parts on the fly if we need to. Yeah.
For those of you wondering on Nautilus Live whether there's any way to view any of the previous dives that we've undertaken on this expedition, I believe that on the Nautilus YouTube channel we do now post full dives. I'm not sure what the delay is in actually between executing the dive and it appearing on YouTube, but that's a great place to direct your interest as well. What you doing, Sarah?
Oh, just looking at stuff that we're recording.
Just doing your whole video thing.
Yeah, we do system health checks every once in a while.
Right.
We have a little list.
How is the health of the system? How is the health of the system right now?
The system is, running as it should. It's quite operational. Check that we're recording both on Hercules and Argus main cameras, and then the backup recordings for each. And
don't lose the cheat sheet.
No. And then we have these time clocks all over the place.
I see those,
in
yeah.
UTC time, and I just look at them all to make sure that they're synced correctly to each other. I check the quad to make sure that what we're streaming is fitting, and that the audio bars are registering. And then I just kind of go through all the different vessel and ROV cameras on my monitor to make sure that they're functional.
Oh, that was
as
a nice.
expected.
That was a nice one. Was that Argus butt cam or?
This one? Oh, this.
Oh yeah.
Oh, butt, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lovely view there of the tether just.
Yeah, here we'll share.
Yeah.
We'll share Argus butt. That's a nice one.
So yeah, there you can see the view from the stern of Argus looking towards Hercules as they both ascend together at approximately the same altitude in the water column.
Back to back.
Yeah, and you can see how the ROV pilots have got it positioned so that the tether between them is more taut than it would be under operations on the sea floor. And you can see even still there's a little bit of an S wave that just propagates along that tether from time to time.
Yeah, we're actually, there's pretty good big wave rolling through right now, every once in a while.
Oh, that's right. So that's just the S wave from Argus being tugged and just propagating down the tether to Hercules.
Well, yeah, I was noticing at the tail end of our dive there that Argus was pitching up and down probably 2.5 to 3 meters.
Yeah, once every minute or so, there's a big one coming through.
Yep. Yeah, they double up in size. And you can definitely feel it in the control van and see it down there. Try and avoid that one when we get up to the surface.
Yeah, it's all about timing.
Yeah. Larger, yeah. Yeah, I like them.
Do a shout out, I guess, because tomorrow the other video engineering intern and I are going to be doing the Instagram takeover.
Oh, fantastic. What does that involve then?
Well, everybody can do it kind of based on their role.
Yeah.
And the ones you've seen recently, if you follow the Instagram, are Alex did one. He's our nav right now.
Uh-huh.
He did one a couple days ago. And then Ashley did one, and she is the, she's one of our data loggers.
Yep.
And has been helping in the lab and everything as the samples come back. And she did one that was filled with amazing puns. So definitely check those out.
So what actually is Instagram? just imagine there's a level 0 and start me there.
Totally.
It's a rabbit hole.
Literally, it's a rabbit hole.
Oh yeah?
No. It's an app.
Uh-huh.
And an app is a thing on your phone or tablet or computer that kind of does its own thing.
I do have apps.
Yeah,
I don't have a phone. I have an
You don't need to go back that far.
I have an iPad.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, Instagram is an app that you could get, and it's revolves around pictures and photos, and people post photos.
Okay.
So
how do
Twitter focuses on the short brain fart, and Facebook focuses on kind of the friend network and life updates, I guess. Instagram is like it's like Twitter but with only pictures, and then you have a caption. People can have very long captions, of course, but
there's a picture count for 1,000 tweets.
I like to think so.
Yeah. So how do folks find the Nautilus Instagram account?
It's at Nautilus Live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And so what have you got planned? I don't want you to give away any of your secrets, though. If you've got some
well,
big
I won't
reveals.
go into it, but it's going to be great.
Okay.
We're going to
sorry,
focus.
What was that youth phrase that just was contributed by our off-mic video engineer?
Wayne tried to say something cool, and he said it's.
In what direction?
He said it's going to be lit.
Okay. What does that mean? Literal or lit on fire?
On
Excitingly
fire.
bright.
Okay.
It will be as bright as your phone screen, technically.
Okay. So for those of you following on Nautilus Live, the running joke here is that I'm a technological dinosaur, still living in the late Cretaceous. I don't own a phone of any description, and
it's true.
I love it. Oh, it's sorry. So I'll just repeat this because.
So yeah, Jess, the video
Oh, that's
engineering
right.
intern, she has a flip phone.
Yep.
She
She explained that
she's
to me. That's
happy
pretty.
about it. She also has an iPod Touch, so she has all the attributes of a smartphone. Let's be honest, and then also has a flip phone for all the calling capabilities.
Okay.
Only.
Right.
Which is good, I guess, to limit texting and calling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then other Wi-Fi enabled things, like everything else, can be done with the other device. Anyway, but I just wanted to say our Instagram takeover is going to be, as Wayne said, lit. And cringe. And
you're not laughing with me, are you?
Are you laughing?
I'm not laughing.
Oh, well, then I guess not.
You're laughing at me, I can tell.
No way.
There's a difference.
No, we're actually going to, I did one last year actually about kind of the video, the cameras on board the Nautilus, focusing on the video engineering side of things. And so this time I actually wanted to focus on women on board the Nautilus.
Okay.
A year ago during the Loihi Seamount subsea NASA expedition, there was a Nautilus scientist on board who did, or communicator on board who did, who wrote an article about women in engineering on board the Nautilus.
Right.
And so I thought it'd be cool for us to turn our lens, so to speak, back onto the women in STEM on board the Nautilus this time.
Nice. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to follow it, but I'll find a buddy with a phone.
I think that there are plenty of people on the ship who have phones.
Yeah, I'm sure I can find someone.
Yeah.
Wait, what are you following?
Hey, Megan.
I just come back.
We're talking about the Nautilus Instagram story tomorrow.
I see.
That Jess and I are going to put together.
Uh-huh. Got it.
Yes.
Very nice.
She was just explaining Instagram to me, Megan.
Yeah.
Oh.
We had to go back a few steps. That's okay. He's all caught up. I actually like Instagram a lot. I think it's fun. The picture-led visual aspect of things without, they really do say 1,000 words.
So for advanced technologically literate people like myself, you can actually follow us on our various platforms. Just if you look on the Nautilus Live webpage, just a little bit below the title, you'll see Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube links.
What are those? What are those ats, links? What would someone tag?
Oh, I'm just looking at here. It's
Nautilus Live, I think it is for most all of them.
Yeah, well, it's facebook.com/Nautilus Live. Then Twitter is @EVNautilus. Then Instagram is Nautilus Live. And then YouTube is EV Nautilus.
EV Nautilus or Nautilus Live, you're gonna get it.
You're gonna get in the right direction. Yep. So other people on Nautilus Live are trying to explain Instagram to me.
Oh, that's nice.
Yep.
Here. What are their explanations?
Apparently, it's a site for photos of food.
That is largely true.
And cats.
Also very true.
Well, just
I think the whole
any
internet is
subject.
just cats, right?
Yeah. Any subject you could take a picture of.
Yeah, and cats and food, probably as well.
Pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Food is a big one, though.
Though cat food, I wouldn't really be that interested in.
Yeah, cat food, sure.
This is like really nice tuna.
But apparently, I didn't realize. So Instagram, what does it stand for? What's the?
I think the Insta. I mean, I'm not sure,
it's
but I assume
it's a contraction of two words.
Wow.
I know what those two words are now.
Yeah.
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 I mean, the Insta is because it's
it's Insta.
instantaneous.
Yep.
Well, and
Is
telegram.
Gram from Telegram?
That's
Like
right, yeah.
telegram.
Yeah.
A little message.
Yeah. No, I remember
Instant
telegrams. I'm that old.
Pictogram?
Pictogram? Is
Uh-huh.
that what it should be called?
No,
Instead
no,
of
I'm just
Instagram?
saying that because of the picture aspect of it, the gram is the second half of some word, right?
Yeah, telegram. We just told you what it was.
Is it really?
Yes. That's the message part.
Well, where's the picture come into it?
I have no idea. That's why it should be called pictogram, not Instagram.
Instapic.
I love these intergenerational moments of connection we get in the room.
But gram is on the end of pictogram and telegram.
Well,
Yeah.
gram means writing.
So
Right.
So telegram means writing at a distance. Pictogram means a pictorial writing system.
Should it technically be telepicta Instagram? Because it's still
It-
from
And then
afar.
if you named it that, nobody would download it.
Yeah.
So
not
Instagram
so
works.
catchy.
And it caught on just fine.
That's why I'm in science.
Okay, I'm gonna
guys.
bring you I'll bring you my water song.
Well,
And the acronym would be TPIG.
well, Gram is just Gram's origins are Greek though, and back in ancient Greece, I imagine there probably were not cameras. So when it's referring to something written or drawn, it's like a drawing on a cave or something like that, or on some sort of like piece
Yeah.
of stone or slab. It's almost like a precursor to an image, right? Like a drawing.
You
So
can have all
there
kind
you
of
go.
grams.
It's like kind of like a
Well, yeah,
It's
in Greek times when
instantaneous, like,
they
modern
would just
gram.
send the messenger, and he was called Marathon, and he would just run until
Yes.
take the message from place to place, and he was your Instagram. And then
Yeah.
by the time he got there, he forgot what he was supposed to tell you, and
I'm
it
just
became
saying-
something different.
I'm just saying that grams. You were that person in telephone game, weren't you?
Where are we
That
going?
always
Back to
changed
Greek
the
ancient times
message.
with Hercules and Argus.
oh my gosh.
And we've come full
We are full circle back to the control van.
Phew.
Told you it was a rabbit hole.
If we made it a rabbit hole, though. Made it into a
Phew,
bear
back
hole.
in the control van. Stepped away too long. 2 apps.
Dreaming.
You can leave the control van, but the control van never leaves you.
As you might be able to tell on nautiluslive.org, this is the penultimate dive. And we have spent a lot of time with each other over the last 2.5 weeks.
Though apparently not enough to have explained Instagram before this moment.
Well, that's the great thing about we're exploring every day.
There's always something to learn
Yep.
about each other. Oh,
It's awesome you don't have a phone, though. I admire that.
yeah.
Yeah. I might come up against a bit of a barrier when my daughter justifiably wants one. She's
Right.
11 years old now, so we'll see how we
Same
cross
age
that
as my
threshold.
daughter.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So
I mean, I had a flip phone for the longest time, just for
define the
necessary calls.
longest time.
For way longer than anybody else had flip phones.
Okay.
Except for
At least 6
Jess, of
months.
course.
Yeah.
No, all through, like, I got a phone, like, later years of high school, and then had it through most of college.
Right.
I mean, those are non-flippy phone times, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Non-flippy
People were
phone
like,
time.
what is that thing? And I'm like, it takes pictures. And they're like, wow, you still have to.
One of
press
the nicest
buttons.
cruises that I had on here is when the satellite broke,
Oh yeah.
and then nobody could look at their email,
And we-
nobody could look at their phones, and
and we-
people actually spoke with one another. It
Oh,
was
yeah.
quite interesting.
Yep. Yep. I mean, actually, I would say the only time I've noticed a lack of having a smartphone was actually when I came down to San Francisco for the cruise, and taxis don't exist
Right.
anymore. That was the one time I felt a little bit unconnected.
Yeah.
But up until that point, I mean, sometimes I travel a lot for my work, and sometimes when I'm traveling, little things crop up, and I find it's a great way to meet people,
Yeah.
especially people who work in the airport information desks. There are still courtesy phones.
That's true.
I feel like we've hung out, though. I mean, we've been doing the crossword every day. And
On the phone.
Yes. But we're not getting the paper delivered delivered to the boat.
Words.
But, I mean,
Play cards.
yeah,
Yep.
cards.
Yep,
Physical.
real cards.
Real
Physical
cards.
cards.
There's a Scrabble set that has been used.
Yeah.
Real words.
Yeah.
Delivered.
So, John, how did you get to the boat from the airport?
Oh, thankfully there was a whole group of us at the airport hotel, and so I just I parasitized basically.
Oh,
The longest Uber ride ever.
Yeah, I attached myself to a group.
oh, good. Thought you might have had to resort to the old thumb.
Oh yeah, I would have hitchhiked, no problem.
Quiet.
I'm sure I'd have been arrested, but I could have had one of those placards say, you know, we'll tell stories for lifts. We'll explain science for travel.
We'll explain really far travel for really close travel.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's a very good point.
So, Josh, I'm a bit late to the game. How long is this transit?
This is a long transit.
We're a little over 2 hours.
Or Alex, I should ask the navigator.
Yeah, 2 hours away.
The
2
nav
hours and
nerd.
10 2 hours, over 2 hours.
Wow, that's a big one.
We like to think that it's just good company, good quality time.
Yeah. No phones.
But it's interesting what Josh said about people talking to each other. I started my astronomy career kind of at the start of the internet, right? It was just going in the mid-90s. And so when I first started going to telescopes and observe, it was like some kind of a retreat. It was wonderful. You'd have no web connection up there. You'd be separated from the pressures of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. You would talk to each other and read and write. Yeah, I loved it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I was on my phone.
Okay.
I'm kidding. I was looking right at him.
It's true though. That's the thing I enjoy about field work as well. Like when you go to, I was doing some field work over in like some rainforest and whatnot, and it's like you get a good sense of community with the people that you're there with, and I mean you're so far away from anything that you don't have any reception, which is actually pretty great.
Yeah.
You can actually enjoy your own thought space, and it's quite a nice time.
Yeah. I think that's another thing that helps me in particular. I'm pretty happy in my own head.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Yeah.
I think at least growing up without a phone, you know, like when I was a child, I was phoneless, and it wasn't a thing for kids to have phones
Yeah,
or have
that's
access to smartphones. Like smartphones were a thing. So I grew up knowing how to entertain myself and, you know,
Good
being
point.
thrown outside and stuff. It's not like I grew up with it. It just became a thing later on after
Right.
I had already learned how to look out a window for hours and be perfectly fine.
I think
And read a book.
Yeah, that too. Imagination.
I think what they're saying now too, right? I mean, if you give that's actually quite damaging for little kids to have smartphones so young, right? Or to be
Totally.
looking at a screen, the blue lights. I mean, who knows how it's actually going to change how your eye quality, your vision quality over time if you're exposed to such like stimuli so young.
As we sit here in front
Yeah,
of
I was going
like,
to say
what,
500
40 monitors.
But we're past that pre-developmental
Yeah.
phase.
Yeah.
But you're right, Jessica. I had a similar conversation with my optometrist because both my wife and I have got really bad vision, and we were just inquiring about the hereditability of bad eyesight, and apparently it doesn't pass down very effectively. It's a lot of it's environmental, as you say.
Right.
Weird.
Mm.
Because my mom and dad both had very thick glasses, and my brother and I haven't needed glasses.
Exactly. So that would tend to support that point.
I didn't know that at all. It's environmental? That's interesting.
Well, he commented that it's not 100% one way or the other, but he said that optometrists are seeing a strong uptick in youth myopia, poor vision.
Right.
Wow.
And if you know, of course, trying to find a approximate cause for that is, sometimes hard to show sort of with studies. You've got to sort of be quite careful and go into people's lives and study their patterns. But it's not unreasonable to think it's related to screen usage.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point.
What about reading books?
Spicy.
Well, you know, actually, if you go back in the literature, you know, pardon the pun, but when books first started to become available to the mass public, there were similar concerns about people were destroying their eyesight by trying to read books by candlelight.
Well, certainly when I was reading books in like the dark or something, my parents would be like, turn on a light, or, you know,
oh, you mean
underneath the covers of the flashlight.
Yep.
Like, don't strain your eyes.
Yep.
Yeah. Who knows how the next couple hundred years of human evolution will have our eyesights change, right? I mean, just who knows?
Yeah, well, these are all such recent developments. Even the book, it's only been with, you know, that everybody can basically afford to buy a book for about the last, I don't know, what would we say, 150 years or so. That's pretty recent.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
So was there any updated science discussing how reading books affects vision? Or is it mostly focused on screens?
I don't know. I've not followed the science on that much. As I said, this was just a casual conversation I had when I was getting my annual visit to have my eyes tested.
The moral is not to not read books, though.
Definitely want to read books.
Please be literate.
Well, I think they've correlated the screen time to brain inactivity. So you're basically being fed the story and the images, whereas when you read a book, it makes you imagine things and create the images in your head, which is much better for your brain activity than watching screens, which is why they want to limit kids the screen time.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
They find too that if you, even with computers and like say like code writing or things like that, they find that if kids develop their sense of creativity without that, then when they go to learn about coding or things like that, they come to it with a lot more creativity and a different perspective than if they like learn it as a really young age and kind of develop within it.
Oh, that's a good
So
point.
it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting, yeah. Because you see so many apps that are, you know, teach your kids how to code at a very young age.
Yeah, well, my daughter was working with Scratch, which is an MIT coding, like Learn to Code sort of gives you bits of code that you can kind of copy and paste and make your own little things. So
yeah,
it's kind of it now.
It's kind of an icon-based programming language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Interesting.
Little free thing that the MIT lab created.
Yeah, open access.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, interesting. And did they specify in the study that you read as to what there was like a threshold age in which they saw this creativity spike or decrease?
I'm not sure. Not.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think like of books or stories as having content, and then the reading is just one way of consuming it. Like when I was little and still, I listened to a lot of books on tape, and I wonder if listening to books on tape has maybe still given the benefits of putting stories together, but without maybe some of the damage to eyes. It's a totally small sample size, but one of my siblings was reading much more and on a computer much more when we were younger and has much less clear vision than myself. And I would say the same about both my parents and the differences between them, but I've never heard of anything actually talking about that specifically until this watch. It's kind of it makes me wonder. I'd like to go learn.
Yeah. I mean, I think certainly when you really sit down and listen to a story on the radio, it's a very visual experience in your mind.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never really gotten into books on tape because, I don't know, I find them slow. Like, I guess I've always listened to them.
You've obviously not read my audiobook.
No, I should. I will listen to that when you record it with your own voice.
Yeah, I know. Next book.
No, I guess, well, I mean, part of it is that mostly it's been Harry Potter, and the problem with this example might be that I've read it a lot already, so that I can like anticipate what's coming, and so like the books on tape take a lot longer.
Okay.
And so I'm just kind of like, wow, I could have been through this chapter and, you know, sped through it already because I know what's coming.
I see.
Whereas another book,
which you don't know so well,
which I don't know,
right,
might be less. I might just be caught up in it a little more. But
I certainly agree with the point some of you guys have made, that depending upon how you process information, whether by reading on a screen or reading a book or listening, one's brain processes that information in a different way. I always found when I was revising for my big exams as an undergraduate, if I just read the material, it wouldn't stay in.
No way, yeah.
I had to read it and then copy it out, and somehow that additional physical extra made it it fixed it in my mind in a way I could retrieve it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I still like take a lot of notes and stuff just because I remember things so much better.
I think one interesting thing about when going to university and having a professor that writes on a chalkboard, writes on a board, writes out the information, equations, formulas, it puts it out at a pace that's very digestible as well. And now you see so many PowerPoints that have so much information on it, but the pace at which people proceed through that information makes it kind of almost harder to digest, right? And so when people actually go through the physical, when the professor himself or herself goes through the act of writing out these equations and these concepts on a board, I think that makes it such a different experience.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And now we've kind of gone away from that very much so.
Oh no, you're looking at a living fossil here in the room.
Oh, it's curious, you know, since you brought up universities and whatnot, that physical act of not only yourself writing it out, but of watching someone else write it out physically somehow also alters how you process that material.
You're right. I do it deliberately because it slows me down.
Right.
Especially when you have a very concept-rich subject. I find I've got to slow it down, otherwise the students just can't take it all in.
Yeah. I wonder if that could have something to do with the way you think about things when they're like not completed yet. When you're watching someone write it out, you're like waiting for the next thing that they're writing, and you're kind of thinking about it more and anticipating, kind of like listening to a half of a conversation. Your brain's trying to fill in the other half and is really engaged. And so with a PowerPoint...
I'm doing that right now.
Yeah. So with a PowerPoint, you see it all up there, and you don't actually have to take in what you're seeing like that.
Right. You don't have to process it.
And you don't have to write it down because you just assume you'll have it later.
Yeah.
Well, this deviated significantly from Instagram.
Yeah.
Very nicely done.
We can go highbrow and lowbrow.
Indeed.
But about the speed of an audiobook or something like that, I also found some of them to be a little bit slow for me, and it's really great. Most audio book apps or things like that, you can speed them up. And
oh, cool.
It's actually so great if it's a slower pace or something, maybe too quick or a different language or something like that. You can speed it up or slow it down and change the pace, and I find that really helpful. And I was listening to books all throughout my childhood and not really reading as much, and speeding them up almost twice the speed sometimes, and just going through material like that was really effective for me.
So do their voices get really high?
No, actually. It just depends on how they're recorded, but not the ones I had. It was actually pretty smooth.
So I'm just looking at the scientific paper that one of our contributors sent us via the Nautilus Live feed on essentially the relative levels of comprehension with audio versus visual processing. Apparently there's negligible differences, but I'm just taking a look at the paper itself.
Ooh, a paper.
Well, then you'll have to go and listen to the paper later to know for sure.
That's right. See, if I read it and listen to it, I can understand it more or less.
We should have half the people on Nautilus listen to it and half of them read it and see who really absorbed the information better.
Yeah, so does modality matter? The effects of reading, listening, and dual modality on comprehension. So feel free to use nautiluslive.org to send us off on our next cascade of conversation. You guys post it, we'll do our best to talk about it. Oh, wonderful. We've just been joined from a class of 6- and 7-year-olds from Sydney, Australia, who have been watching our videos every week this term. They've discovered the Dumbo octopus sperm whale videos, and they were just wondering what we found at the Seacliff hydrothermal vent site that is interesting for us. So I guess we're coming to the end of our cruise. So what have you guys found as the highlights that these kids should take a look at?
Well, I think the venting for sure. It was very cool to understand that there's a lot of life and community around these hot vents with live in an area of no light and living off energy and produce in different ways.
Yep.
It was very cool.
And visually they're great to look at.
Yeah.
Right. I think the bushels and bushels of tube worms that we saw were pretty neat. All tangly bushes of tubes of worms.
Can you eat your mic a little more, Jess?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Good stuff.
Is that more chewy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was saying the bushels of tube worms were one of the highlights for me because they're just such a tangled mess of worms.
Yep. I also liked it when we zoomed in when we were doing some of the super sampling on those really tiny fields of view, and you see it's like a little jungle in there. All the different types of worms, the sea spiders, the spider crabs that aren't a crab. And
they're not a spider.
They are a crab.
That's
They're a
right. I
crab,
was getting
right?
it wrong.
They're
Yeah,
a
it's
crab, not a
late. Yeah,
spider.
they're a crab but not a spider. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it might not be on YouTube yet, guys, but we had a dive that preceded last night where we actually just went off and explored using the cameras going across this area where these two tectonic plates meet each other, and we saw some of the both the amazing geological features and some amazing examples of life living on these extreme rock formations.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. It was such dramatic lava landscapes with sponges and corals and sea cucumbers and
Even if
fish.
they weren't flying last night.
Oh, but I saw one today.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did. It was amazing.
Cool.
It was really cool. But yeah, like really dramatic pillars covered with these corals and sponges and everything. It was really beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's there.
And just the dramatic fissures in the floor, like knowing that that was all created by big like lava flowing out and then the earth splitting apart. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, let us know where your school is in, the name of your school in Sydney, Australia, and we'll give you guys a shout out as we try to answer some of your questions.
I think one thing I really liked about this this cruise, and I think most Nautilus cruises in general, but maybe especially subsea, is how collaborative it is across all the different sciences, and there are different teams of people with all their own objectives and all these different departments, and we're having meetings all the time talking about how to conduct this dive and all the previous ones and this cruise and last year's, such that everyone gets the results. And I think the division of science is so strong and maybe becoming more pronounced in divisions of most disciplines, but I feel like in oceanography it's kind of cool how collaborative everything is, since we're going to such remote areas. When we're studying rocks, it's not just the rocks, but how they're relating to everything else, how they're relating to the geochemistry and the microbiology and all of that. It's pretty big picture. It's cool.
Yeah, no, it's important to have that holistic view of what we do, and also the fact that I don't know, because I've only ever been on the Nautilus. I've not been on other research ships, and it almost feels like a teaching ship at times, as well as doing the advanced research. Everybody's willing to tell their stories and tell them, you know, what it's like to be an explorer in their particular discipline.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's Nautilus. One of its key missions is kind of running the ship as a training vessel, and that's the way. That's one of the missions of OET.
Yeah.
And the way we run the ship. So we're here to learn and here to share, and you know, it's an opportunity for people to come in knowing, you know, some about their interests, but also get exposure to so much more, and especially like the internship program, where, you know, they can get some exposure and help kind of guide them and you know, where they want to go with their work and their life. So it's a great experience for bringing that all together.
The way I describe it to people is I say, you'll basically spend 3 weeks flying so far beyond your comfort zone, it's not funny.
Yeah.
And you'll never have had so much fun in your life.
Yeah, if you like a challenge, then it's really fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's challenging, but in a very in a good way, like a stimulating, keep you on your toes, learning a lot, like a sponge sort of way.
Good analogy. Learn it like a sponge.
Land sponge or sea sponge?
I mean, not a glass sponge, because
right.
they're not.
Little sharp and pointy.
Yeah, sharp and pointy. I don't know how absorbent they are.
They do have some like really good wafting behavior though.
They do. But I don't want the
Yeah, it's a
information
pump.
to waft
Yeah,
through
pump.
me.
You want to absorb it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're pulling in all that information.
Yeah, and then
It's
they're
like water being
eating
pumped
it.
through.
Sifting it. Picking out the bits they need.
Oh, we got a flicker in one of our cathodics.
Yeah.
Notice that.
How do they waft? Do they have cilia?
I believe so. Yeah, they
Okay.
they
I mean, look
have
at
a
my
lot of
nose.
small, tiny little pores in their body, and then one osculum at the top, a large opening.
Yep.
And for a while there, I think they believed that once they got the flow going, the water going, they would sort of act as a pump.
Right.
But
yeah.
I think they've learned that they actually have to expel some energy to keep the water moving.
Okay. Yeah. It's not like a perpetual
It's not
motion
just,
machine.
yeah, exactly.
They orient themselves a certain way. Their concave side is facing the current, I think, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I could have this backwards, but they're aligned with the current so that the side with more surface area kind of collects all of the possible particles that they can. And then, like in corals, if you see them aligned, their fans are going to be perpendicular to the current, because then more of that water is passing through them.
Right. So they present the biggest surface area to
Right.
it. Yeah, I understand.
Sponges are the same. I just can't remember if that's their concave or convex side.
Uh-huh.
Anybody? Anybody?
Well, I know with sea pens in shallower waters, the tentacles are on the down current side, because as the water hits their body, it swirls around, and that's where all the food gets captured, is actually on the other side.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I'm not sure about sponges though. But yeah, sponges are basically a giant filter. We need them to filter out the ocean for us a little bit, clean it up.
Totally.
So pretty important ecosystems. And there's a lot in the Strait of Georgia around where I live. A lot of sponge reefs in the Strait of Georgia. Really vital ecosystems for that body of water.
Yeah.
So when you were on the...
That's right, you have beautiful sponge reefs over there. Sorry,
No,
Don.
no, don't worry, no. So when you were on the Ocean Networks Canada cruise a couple of years ago, guys, and you went inshore for, I left, I was just on the offshore stage, and I know that you spent a few days inside the Georgia Strait and the Salish Sea. Was that the first time you kind of explored with Nautilus there and had the first time to see those environments, or had you seen them before operating in those waters? Because I know you have an ROV company that you operate in those waters.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to have a fair amount of opportunity to look at quite a bit of the Strait of Georgia and also the central and north coast.
Yep.
Of BC. And I mean, British Columbia's coastline is so vast. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
But there's sponge reefs up and down the coast. And I've had really fortunate to have the opportunity to sail and explore with some leading scientists in Canada who study sponges and sit next to them as we're operating the ROVs and just...
They do their thing.
I'm just, the pun is right there. I just soak it up, right? Like
yep.
Oh, right there.
Yep.
Anyway. Yeah, so I've seen a lot of the reefs, the known reefs in the Strait of Georgia several times. And also up in the northern part of Vancouver Island, there's a couple of smaller ones. And then I was actually a part of finding some unknown ones that were up on the north coast. We found a section that nobody knew about before, which was very cool. And then we also explored a really unique species that's in Hecate Strait, which is a strait between Haida Gwaii and the mainland.
Yep.
And it's quite a exposed and well known for its really rough weather, so you can only get in there at certain times, but there's a unique species that lives in that area as well. So I've seen a lot of the different sponge areas in British Columbia.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do they do in terms of protecting these sites against possible development or exploitation?
Yeah, I think they're...
I mean, the first step is always to discover them. You've got to know where they are.
It's getting the information out there, and I don't know, I'm not exactly sure what they're doing for, I know some of them are trying to protect, especially in the Hecate Strait, they're trying to get some protected areas from fishing and things like that can disturb these ecosystems, and because they're very slow growing, so if you kind of wipe them out, it takes a long time for them to come back. I know they've tried to, like there's RCA, so there's rockfish conservation areas throughout British Columbia that they've kind of designated those as like no fishing areas, and maybe they've been trying to piggyback on that a little bit to try and protect some of those reefs.
Okay.
But yeah, it's kind of like getting the education out there. Not like sponges aren't like a good poster, you know. They're beautiful. Yeah. But you know, it's not like something that the general public really grabs onto.
But as you mentioned, they're really important kind of marker species.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. You know, I mean, the reefs out from the Fraser River, the ones out in front of the Fraser River are very cool because usually people associate sponges with, they tend to suffocate at a lot of sediment.
That's right, it blocks the pores.
At the mouth of the Fraser River,
that's
dumping as much sediment as you get, and there's a huge reef right there.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so that's one of the reasons why it's studied so much is how do these particular sponges adapt to that environment when people say they're not supposed to be able to live in those. And that's a huge sponge reef that's been there for many, many years.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's super cool. Relatively shallow, so we're only talking like 150, 200 meters.
Okay, so interesting. So all of these are well beyond the reach of scuba divers.
Yeah, they are.
Because one book I was going to recommend to people who actually want to appreciate some of the beauty of the coast you're talking about is I've got a great, I guess you'd call it a coffee table book called Beneath Cold Seas. And it's essentially a photographer who's also a scuba diver went out and kind of photographed as much of the life from the surface down to the maximum depth of scuba diving. Right. And it's just an amazing visual survey of that, below tidal zone in BC.
Yeah, BC is a pretty rich coast, upwelling region, just so much current and food, and there's amazing diving. Mostly the winter time is the best time to dive around the island 'cause you can see a lot better. But it's a really fascinating place as far as all the diversity in the marine life in that area.
I started my snorkeling career actually on the New Year's Day off Saturna Island.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, we were talking about Saturna, yeah.
Yeah, and I basically, my Christmas present was vast amounts of neoprene. And, but, because of course you play the game where you say, okay, so it doesn't matter when you go because the water temperature is pretty much the same all year round. It's between 6 and 8 degrees Celsius. But it hits you like a sledgehammer, I have to say.
Yeah, I opted for the dry suit when I was starting. Yeah.
So just to go back to our school that's watching from Sydney, Australia, they gave us a great comment actually, and I'd really, it sounds wonderful. So they were actually, last week they were improvising music to some of our Nautilus Live videos.
Ooh.
That sounds like a pretty interesting project.
So where did you say the school was? Was it in Sydney?
Sydney, Australia.
Oh, okay, Sydney, okay.
Not of course the
not Sydney.
The true Sydney.
Yeah, spelled differently.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to do some ROV work in north of Darwin, Australia.
Oh my word! Yeah.
Sort of in between Indonesia and the northwestern part of Australia. Just the most spectacular coral reef I've ever experienced.
Okay.
It's way out in the middle of the ocean, so it's at the top of a submerging volcano.
Right.
And you can still see the rim of the volcano as a lagoon, creates a reef in a lagoon.
Oh, how interesting.
Out right in the middle of the ocean. So everywhere around it is like 3,000 meters deep.
Yeah.
And then this cone comes up to actually break the surface of the ocean. And then you can take a ship right inside this, and there's a lagoon that's about 60 meters deep.
That's amazing.
In there, and then there is just, because no one goes there.
Yeah.
And it's completely virgin coral reef.
Uh-huh.
And hard sponges, soft sponges, corals, soft corals, hard corals, and these huge sponges.
Right.
And all different kinds of life, fish, sharks, everything. Sea snakes.
Oh yeah.
Like just teeming, absolutely teeming. And I've never seen anything like it. Scott Reef, it's called Scott Reef.
Okay.
And it's absolutely spectacular.
How
did
you get that gig?
It was off the Falkor.
Okay.
And they had a inspection class ROV that they were having they'd just gotten, and they weren't really used to it, and they were having some trouble with it.
Okay.
And they needed someone to come out and kind of get it going, and also work with the scientists that were there to do some exploring around this reef.
So you were explaining that to me last night. So Falkor is the ship of the Schmidt Institute, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the Schmidt Ocean Institute, SOI.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was a great time. A really good time there.
You're a one-man Blue Planet.
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky going around and operated lots of different systems and seen all different kinds of things.
So just to give everyone the heads up, it's I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it properly, but Sans Souci Public School in Sydney, Australia. Thanks for joining us, guys. Just for those of you on Nautilus Live as well, who very kindly contribute YouTube playlists on interesting themes for us. Actually, YouTube is blocked for us on the ship. We can't access it on some of our computers just because it eats our limited bandwidth, and so we block some of these sites. At least on my SCF computer here.
Josh, I'm going to play around with your mezzo for a minute.
Yeah. It's the Argus one?
Yeah, it's the Argus one again. I can stay on. I like that one to work with.
So Sarah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is that your Nautilus notebook?
Yeah.
Where you keep all of your Nautilus knowledge in?
Yeah.
Nice. I saw you were referring to it when we were talking, when you were telling us about the sponges, this kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a sacred tome of
it's a treasure.
information
Yep.
that I've taken notes in. Don't look at it. Yeah, you know, got all my notes from my very first day on board last year through the cultural briefing we had in Hawaii.
Of course. Yeah, because you went to
and
Papahānamakuakea.
It was really good pronunciation.
Thank you.
And species ID stuff, and then this year's stuff with all the updates and control van and
Oh yeah.
I took notes during your talk.
Oh yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Very good. I approve.
That one.
Yes. As you were saying earlier, it does help me remember things.
Oh,
and
yeah.
also I like having it there to like look back on and remember that it happened at all.
That's true. Because that's the.
Lose track of time here, you know.
Well, no. The biggest thing is that as soon as you step off the ship, right, you realize what an intense bubble it is, and how sharp is the boundary between life on the ship and then life off the ship when you go back to our, in inverted commas, normal lives.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting.
So how's it been different for you, this cruise, now that you're a video engineer, compared to last year as a video engineering intern? How have you kind of found the pressures on you are different for your job?
I mean, the job itself is much the same, like my role as the video engineer on watch, because as an intern, interns have their own watches.
Oh,
They're,
exactly, yeah.
you know, on their own kind of trial by fire. You learn the basics, and you have your mentors, you know, overseeing your particular department with you for your first several dives. But
I was just wondering if you felt the expectations that you place on yourself were a little bit different this time around.
I don't know. I always have kind of high expectations.
No, that's a very good thing to have, yeah.
I wanted to do more, like, hopefully be able to pass on stuff to the video engineering intern this time.
Right, I see.
Like things that I learned last time.
So be a bit more of a mentor.
Yeah,
yourself.
or because she's also interested in, like, outside of the Nautilus, filming things and stuff like that. So, talking about that, and that industry and everything. So, trying to do more of that as well.
Cool.
Trying to remember things from last year.
Yeah.
Instead of like being taught them all over again.
Yeah, I had that issue as well.
So the notebook has really been helpful.
Yep.
But a lot of it, like after the first dive, it's like kind of.
It comes
I remember
back a
where
little
the
bit.
buttons are.
Yeah.
I remember the process. It kind of comes back. So it's nice.
Yep. That was the same for me after, because there's so many little technical things associated with the SCF position that before I came back I was thinking I can't remember any of them.
Yeah.
And then after a day or two you get back into the swing of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my expectations were to try to like remember to do as much as I could instead of having to have it repeated.
I see.
And there have been some updates which have been awesome. So learning new things as well, because the updates bring new challenges or make things easier usually.
Yep. Ooh.
Fish. Couple of fish.
Rat tails.
But it was really actually really awesome. The lead video engineer, Ed, is not on the boat right now, but he was on the boat with me last year and was on the boat with Jess, the video engineering intern, earlier in the
on
season.
The previous cruise, because she's done a couple back-to-back.
Right, and he tells all his interns before we even step into the control van, he's like, what you learn is on me to be able to teach it to you.